Some 37 years ago, in the summer of 1984, the world bare witnessed to the world's first blockbuster. Three of the best comedic performers of that time in Bill Murray, Harold Ramis, and Dan Aykroyd came together to deliver what is considered not only one of the best movies of the 1980s, but also the beginning of one of the best franchises of all time. And it also gave us one of the most iconic movie cars of all time. A must for the kids, and even the big kids. Guilty. How well does it hold up in 2021? Well, let's find out by asking this for the 37th anniversary. Who you gonna call? The genesis of the story comes from Dan Aykroyd and his fascination of the paranormal. His family had a history of being interested in the subject, and the idea for the movie came from when he read quantum physics and parapsychology in the Journal of the American Society for Psychical Research. The original idea would have featured Saturday Night Live alumni John Belushi as Peter Venkman and Eddie Murphy as Winston Zeddemore. Because of Belushi's accidental death in 1982, he approached his other fellow SNL alumni in Bill Murray, and he agreed to take Belushi's place. Ivan Reitman was approached by Dan Aykroyd to direct the project, as he felt he would be best suited to do so. Dan Aykroyd's original script treatment of the movie was much more serious and scary in tone. Ivan Reitman had worked with Harold Ramis before on previous pictures and felt he could get the tone that the movie was looking for, and that he should portray Egon. Ramis knew how to rework the jokes and the humour, whereas Aykroyd was inputting the technical aspects of the equipment and the ghosts. Murray met up after completing the filming of Razor's Edge and offering his input to the script. The script depicted Venkman as the cool salesman that had the wit to sway a conversation. Spengler was the factual and intellectual stoic, and Stantz was the eager enthusiast with heart. Zeddemore was the common sense of the group that would cut through the nonsense. Initially, they were not able to use the name Ghostbusters, as this was also the name of a 70s kids show owned by Universal called Ghostbusters. The title was bought from Universal for $500,000 so that the movie could use the full title we know now, as opposed to such suggestions as Ghost Stoppers, Ghost Breakers, and Ghost Mashers. I think the three key aspects that made the movie a success from the perspective of writing and acting performances is pacing, knowing how to balance the tones of sci-fi, comedy, and horror, and Bill Murray's amazing wit and being able to improvise lines on set. The pacing of this flick keeps the audience invested from when they begin furthering their development as paranormal pest controllers after being kicked out of Columbia University for the attention they were attracting. The fun part is seeing them learning on the job as Ghostbusters, and they're learning with the audience, and that is the genius part of the writing from Dan and Harold, as they allow the viewer to keep pace with the story so that it's not moving so fast that they can't keep up. Every character plays a specific part that is integral to the story. Janine is the secretary that feeds the work to them, Peck is the proverbial wrench in the works, and Dana serves as not only Venkman's love interest, but also part of the key of Gozer coming into the world. Things like that make a good conflict of interest for the Ghostbusters, as they know they have a job to do, but they also want to save her. I think it's safe to say that the movie still holds up and it keeps the viewer engaged, which is something that some movies fail to do today. This movie had to rely on the writing and its characters, substance over style, which unfortunately it's the reversal for most movies today. Enthusiasm. This is probably the best one-word assessment of the character that is considered to many as the heart of the Ghostbusters. Dan's performance as the eager and youthfully energetic scientist is something to behold as the group rush headfirst into many of their endeavors. The late Harold Ramis is amazing as the character of Egon, with his straight-faced, sober performance as a scientist who puts facts before emotions. I do like the way he very subtly lays down how much the entrapment of Slimer cost at the Sedgwick, showing how quick thinking the character was. Interestingly enough, both Michael Keaton and Christopher Lloyd were considered to play Egon.
Great Scott!
Ernie's performance as the only non-scientist of the Ghostbusters is not something to play down, as he's basically the audience's participation as the only common sense man of the team that calls it like it is. And as I mentioned earlier, Eddie Murphy had been considered to play Winston Zeddemore. This movie and the Aliens franchise is what helped get this actress onto the map, and I don't think anyone could have played Dana better. She plays a very no-nonsense and skeptical personality well, and has great chemistry with Bill Murray's Peter Venkman as she denies his advances. And then she plays Zool. I got the sense that she might have enjoyed this aspect a little too much. As I've mentioned down the years, an actor's performance will show you when you can't tell if the character or the actor playing them is enjoying it. Her body language and her facial expressions is when Zool is flirting with Venkman with this sexually aggressive, sultry nature that seems to come naturally to her. Now either she's just enjoying the role or she's getting to act out a nympho fantasy of hers. You decide. It's also worth noting that both Julia Roberts and Daryl Hannah auditioned for the role of Dana Barrett as well. Annie's role is smaller compared to the rest of the cast, but she brings a lot of life and moxie to the receptionist of the Ghostbusters with this sassy 80s charm that only she could bring to the role of Janine Melnitz. Plus the short hair look she sported suited both her and the character. It's weird seeing Rick play an awkward dweeby guy like Lewis when you consider the type of characters that he has played in movies like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, or playing Barney Rubble in the Flintstones movie alongside John Goodman in 1994. As Vince, there is still some of that awkwardness as Lewis, but it's more of not being completely aware of what he's doing that makes others feel uneasy when he begins handing items to Egon whilst he's on the phone. Everyone's favourite asshole. He plays Peck to annoying perfection as someone who has nothing but pure contempt to shut the Ghostbusters down, but that was in large part to Peter Venkman being Peter Venkman. I mean, are you really surprised? In life, you always get that one guy that is a stickler for the rules and also a guy that's accused of not being fully equipped.
Yes, it's true. This man has no dick.
David's performance as the mayor of New York, a role he would reprise 5 years later in the sequel, and he would play the psychiatrist at Shady Acres ward in Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. His performance is of a man that is gruff, tell it like it is, no-nonsense mayor of New York that gets swayed by Venkman when they would save the lives of millions of registered voters. And I've saved the best for last. Bill Murray's performance as the moxie mouthpiece of the team is down to the great wit and charisma that he displays as the controversial Dr. Peter Venkman. It's no secret that a lot of the movie's success can be attributed to Murray's performance, and that's fair. Love or hate the character, there is something charming about his exchanges between his castmates to how he deals with characters like Walter Peck to the hotel manager of the Sedgwick.
Oh, excuse me, this is the Ghostbusters office?
Yes, it is. Can I help you?
Now, this is the part that no one wants to talk about. Most of Venkman's antics in the movie in the 80s were dismissed because that decade was a different time to where things were a little more innocent. But then you start to examine Venkman nearly 40 years later and the character is basically a creep. He's an amusing and charming one at the very least, but a creep is a creep. Telling one of the volunteers at Columbia University that she was predicting the cards correctly without showing them and shocking the other guy as a means of trying to set up a date. Yeah, these days that would be heavily frowned upon as that's a big no. And it's the same thing when he visits Dana's apartment for the first time, inspecting for what spooky activity there may be. Now when you're 8 years old, this exchange...
That's the bedroom, but nothing ever happened in there.
What a crime.
Flies over your head. And then you get to 18 and upwards, and then... oh. To such lines as...
This Mr. Stay Puft is okay. He's a sailor. He's in New York. We get this guy laid, we won't have any trouble.
In a phone conversation with Egon, he informs him of his encounter with Dana, now controlled by Zool, was able to subdue her with Thorazine. He brought those with him for his dinner date with Dana. Let that sink in. Needless to say, if the character were being written today, there would be some major revisions. The movie also included celebrity cameos from Larry King Jr., Joe Franklin, and Shaggy of Scooby-Doo fame himself, radio personality Casey Kasem, and a young Debbie Gibson, who, by the way, even today, she still looks amazing. The 1959 Cadillac Miller Meteor Futura duplex is just as much a part of the success of the movie. The car was originally depicted as an all-black matte paint job with purple lights, but I think it was realized as the writing progressed that it would be more fitting if the car was light as a means of lightening up the story, and as it turns out, it was the right choice. Ecto 1's full reveal was done in a similar way to the Adam West Batmobile bursting out of the Batcave or to Stingray blasting out of the ocean door. That dramatic arrival of a superhero is something that still holds strong with fans then and now. Ecto 1 would be given a makeover with more decals and extra equipment added to it, and the car was even seen in the 1986 animated series, The Real Ghostbusters. Ecto 1 is a must for any car model collector, including this one. Boss Film Studios were brought in to handle the visual effects from Slimer, the Proton Streams, and the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man when it had to interact with already shot live action. Before the character was named Slimer in the animated series, the character was referred to as Onion Head Ghost due to the puppet's rather unpleasant aroma. At the request of Murray and Aykroyd, the creature was made an homage to John Belushi by sculptor Steve Johnson. The sculptor was also responsible for the zombie New York cab driver and based the design on a reanimated corpse from 1981's An American Werewolf in London. Dan Aykroyd set a task for his friend, only referred to as the Viking, to make a ghost that is a fusion of the Michelin Man and the Pillsbury Doughboy in a sailor hat. The only segment that doesn't hold up so well is when you see Mr. Stay Puft trampling on the church. Whereas before, when he's walking to Central Park, you buy it that he's there. Whereas after, not so much. Aside from that, the effects still hold up. Just as enjoyable as the writing, the cast performances and effects is the wonderful and memorable score that the late Elmer Bernstein put together. There is such a varied range from the suspenseful pieces used in the opening scene in the library to the guys investigating the Grey Lady ghost. The quirky and light-hearted pieces that are used when the guys acquire the firehouse and to the closing scene after freeing Dana and Lewis from the statues they were held captive in. And to the scene where Venkman is meeting with Barrett outside her theatre while acting like a goofball. Well, to be fair, that's at least one thing I can relate to him with. I'm a goofball. The movie also included songs from recording artists to help set the mood of the scene. One of which that comes to mind is the first cool scene when Janine sounds the alarm and it's scored to Bus Boys Cleaning Up the Town. And it's where we're introduced to Ecto 1 in all its red and white glory as it makes its grand entrance like a superhero. Mick Smiley's magic really set the tone of fear and dread as the containment unit explodes, releasing all of the captured ghosts back into the city. Saving the Day is performed by Alessi Brothers as the police and the army escort Ecto 1 to Dana Barrett's apartment building, and hearing Ecto 1's sirens really adds to the mood, giving that sense of hope to the audience and the characters as it arrives on the scene. And of course, I couldn't talk about the music without mentioning Ray Parker Jr.'s legendary and iconic #1 song, Ghostbusters. Parker Jr.'s smooth delivery of his lyrics really helps to make this song timeless, and just adding further appeal and to the longevity of the movie and the franchise. Ghostbusters made a profit of $295.2 million against a budget of $25 to $30 million.
Well, that wasn't such a chore now, was it?
Today, the profit would be worth $759 million. Ray Parker Jr.'s hit song Ghostbusters would spend 3 weeks at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. The cast even featured in the music video with them dancing down Fifth Avenue, which also saw Bill Murray trying to freestyle to hilarious results. Huey Lewis would sue Ray Parker Jr. for plagiarizing his band's song I Want a New Drug. The case was settled out of court in 1985. The late Roger Ebert gave the movie 3 out of 4 stars, citing it as a rare example of successfully combining a special effects driven blockbuster with sly dialogue. Ebert noted the effects existed to serve the actor's performance and not the reverse, saying it is an exception to the general rule that big special effects can wreck a comedy. He also cited Ghostbusters as a rare mainstream film with many quotable lines.
You gotta try this pole!
We got one!
Don't cross the streams.
We came, we saw, we kicked its ass.
If there's a steady paycheck in it, I'll believe anything you say.
That's a big Twinkie.
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
The movie would spawn merchandise from t-shirts to toys to the Ghostbusters Firehouse and Ecto-1. The merchandise began to take off more effectively with the introduction of the 1986 animated series, The Real Ghostbusters, featuring legendary voice actors in Maurice LaMarche as Egon, Ray being portrayed by Frank Welker, talk show host legend Arsenio Hall as Winston, and playing Peter Venkman was the late Lorenzo Music, who is also known as the true voice of Garfield.
We might have to put a little overtime in on this one.
A sequel followed in 1989 that, while it was still a hit, was not as well received with some critics and fans and was denoted for being more family friendly and repeating elements from the previous movie. The original was depicted as being much darker compared to the latter, with Slimer used in parts to appeal to kids that were fans of the animated series. Another animated series in Extreme Ghostbusters would premiere in September 1997 with Maurice LaMarche reprising his role as Egon Spengler, leading a new team of Ghostbusters. The rest of the original Ghostbusters return in a two-part finale to the series in December of that same year. To tie in with the 25th anniversary of the original movie, Atari and Sony release Ghostbusters the video game, in where you play as a nameless rookie aiding the Ghostbusters set 2 years after the events of Ghostbusters 2. Harold Ramis and Dan Aykroyd wrote the script and even reprised their roles alongside Ernie Hudson, Annie Potts, and William Afferton. Bill Murray recorded his lines separately. The original movie was also released onto Blu-ray for the first time, upscaling it to high definition so that it could be enjoyed more so than ever. And I would know. First one to my collection. There was a reboot in 2016 that was not well received. There wouldn't be another Ghostbusters movie until, at the time of this review, the upcoming Ghostbusters 3 Afterlife, with the story picking up over 3 decades later with Paul Rudd starring alongside McKenna Grace and Finn Wolfhard as the grandchildren of Egon Spengler. Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Ernie Hudson, Annie Potts and Sigourney Weaver return to reprise their iconic roles. The movie has been enjoyed on VHS, Laserdisc, DVD, Blu-ray and 4K since 1984. I'm MJ Knight, and I only got one thing left to say. Who are you gonna call? And scary in tone. That one. And also, why so scarious? I'm the Joker, instead of why so scarious. Ask why so scarious. Hey Lydia, why so scarious? Kaiju goes, let me ask you, my fellow Tokusatsu fans, why so scarious? He's gonna be like, oh dude, I ain't saying that, no way. You decide. You decide. 1 and 3. I'm going to decide later in post credits. Future me, you might want to go with number 1. Future version. Yeah, sure, why not? These days that would be heavily frowned upon as that's a big no. And no. Yes, I mean no. I'm Megatron, no. What if my brother random ever sees us like, oh please you amateur, that's not how David Cage does it. The movie has been enjoyed on VHS, okay, that's weird,